Hello and good morning. How are you doing, Patrick?
Good evening, David. I'm doing well. I feel like we haven't spoken in a while, and I'm glad to see your smiling face.
Yeah, I mean you probably jet lagged from the trip to Dubai. Thank you, Google, for hosting our Patrick in one of your webinars. We're gonna release some videos and some snippets about that. Uh, what did you? We'll keep it for another episode. Can you give us a brief about what you did? What was it about that you were talking in the webinar? I
Sure,
know
yo.
myself.
Yeah, no, we were at it was basically a GA4 reporting and audiences event at the Google office in Dubai. Sunil and I had a chance to, uh, head over to the Google offices and we did, a couple of presentations on, how to really access the gold in GA4 data for analysis and insights, and then, really preparing for the full transition and sunset of universal analytics. So making sure you can um, uh, create and share audiences from GA4 to your connected media platforms, and use GA4 key event data as conversions in your connected media platforms to really, fuel better media measurement. So it was awesome.
It sounds good.
And I know, yeah, I didn't mean to make you yawn, but that was a mouthful. I know.
I mean, we're having some interesting roller coasters with Google. Yeah, they're always
Yeah,
up to
of course. I
something.
mean, yeah, and the event was sort of right on the heels of the um, cookie deadline announcement. So it was, that was certainly on,
Yeah,
top of mind for people. But I think we're sort of past that now, and I think everybody should be preparing for other ways to measure and reach audiences and people.
we did also write a blog about exporting audiences, which is live on our blog for a couple of weeks now. So that might be also worth taking a look at if you
Yeah.
are interested in exporting the audiences. But back to today's episode. So today, you were like giving me a rundown of what you were gonna talk about, and I did forget the name of the term that you told me about, and I still suck at math. So we're gonna start from that. So it
Okay.
was a
Yeah, I was
symptoms.
rereading an article from several years ago by a fellow by the name of Eugene Wei. He was a analyst at Amazon in the early days, and he wrote this article called "Invisible Asymptotes," and it was quite interesting. It sort of sparked some thoughts to my mind about being a better data-driven marketer, and like what, being a sort of data-driven business, what it really might mean, sort of how you have to look at data, think about data, asking business questions, actually preparing how you buy and execute media actually has a big impact on how you can be a business, a data-driven business. So, yeah, just sparked some thoughts. And, he was really focused on these kind of natural ceilings in Amazon's growth that were hit, these plateaus where Amazon really couldn't break through these kind of natural growth rate ceilings until they had certain kind of disruptive events, or disrupted their business in significant ways that kind of set a new level, right? So that, like, they found these ways of propelling growth and adoption, by the way they changed their business model and pricing models, et cetera. Like, Amazon Prime was the example he used, but I wanted to apply this concept. So, right, an asymptote in math, in geometry, is a straight line, uh, that a curved line approaches but never touches. And it essentially approaches zero distance from the straight line as the curve approaches infinity, but it never actually touches the line, right? So that's, it's a great image for like these ceilings, or, these kind of natural plateaus that growth curves, or any kind of curve approaches over time. And we see them in e-commerce and digital marketing related metrics pretty regularly. And so the thought is you either need to get really comfortable that given, well, before I jump into the details, does that jive with what we were talking about earlier?
Yep, yep, it is.
Okay. All right. So, for the purposes of a digital marketer, or let's say for any business that is trying to be more digitally mature, right? And really, and being a data-driven business is really part of being a digitally mature enterprise. Getting really comfortable with those invisible asymptotes, right, that pertain to your business. So if you take a given sort of competitive landscape, total addressable market, product assortment, product market fit, just kind of layer in the different factors you can think of. There are going to be some quote unquote kind of natural metrics that pertain to your business, right? You're going to have kind of conversion rate ranges that are sort of like normal. Again, assuming your website is functional, you're not like inadvertently showing customers broken experiences and all those things. That's not normal business operation, right? You should be taking care of those things regardless. But assuming everything is sort of working as expected, you're going to end up with these kind of natural metrics, and you're going to run up against, when you start doing improvement regimens, doing serial analysis to try and find opportunities for improvement, you're going to find that you're going to end up with these diminishing incremental improvements, and you're going to approach this asymptote. So I'll share my screen and we can kind of talk through a couple of visuals. It might make it a little more helpful.
Will disappear into the abyss when you share your screen. I'll be still here, but here. And wait. Et
So,
voila.
all right. So, just a couple
Oh,
of
wait.
examples, right? Oh, are we? Oh, I see. I
Yeah.
think I see why. There is that better?
Ah, yeah, that is. There is one at the
Uh,
top, but I'm not sure if it's covering the headline, so it's not really
let's see.
doing much harm. Oh,
How
oh,
about
is that
that?
Chrome? Ah, yeah, that's better. Yeah.
All right. So let's think about conversion rate performance, right? So I once worked for this company. It was a travel company, and it was a bit of a niche market. And at the time, I think our conversion rate against like all site visitors, it was sitting somewhere around 0.35%. And I remember in a all hands meeting of leadership, I remember the CEO saying, "I can't be the CEO of a company that's converting at 0.5%." And I guess I didn't know any better at the time, but I raised my hand up and I said, "Well, right now you're the CEO of a company that converts at 0.35."
Well,
Anyway, it didn't sit too well, but it nevertheless is a funny story. But if you think about over time, right, as if you just launch a website as an e-commerce, etc., right, maybe right out of the gate, you're trying to build some momentum, and you might have a very low conversion rate. And keep in mind, if you measure conversion rate against sessions versus against users, you will get very different metrics, very different values. So just keep in mind how you define that makes a difference. But in this case, let's just assume it's against sessions. So, and as you layer in, you're going to probably start with the most efficient media channels first, and you're going to start growing that footprint, and you're going to see some improvement in that metric, pretty steadily for a while. You could gain some traction on organic channels. You're just kind of building your footprint, more awareness. start building a little bit of repeat business. All these different things will impact your business performance. But so you're going to improve your conversion rate, no doubt. Again, assuming you don't deliver a broken website or your pricing is not outrageously out of line with the market, all these kinds of things. There's some product market fit, but at some point you are going to kind of run up against that line, right? And like in this case, let's just say for this particular business in this particular industry, 2.35% is sort of where you really just radically just flatten out against improvement. For all intents and purposes, that is going to be a bit of a natural metric. So again, unless you find a disruptive change to your business, again, whatever your version of a kind of Amazon Prime is, you're not going to probably break through that ceiling very easily. So you're going to have to get a bit comfortable with this kind of asymptote of conversion rate. Now, this is not an excuse to stop improving. It's just at this point, you should expect more kind of incremental kind of improvement, versus like real hockey stick type improvements, right? And also, if you are looking for disruptive business practices, just remember, like most of those disruptions are not free. So for example, Amazon modeled and tried several different kind of shipping, their initial growth ceiling was really limited by shipping fees. And so they actually had a multi-year initiative to try and address shipping fees as a limiting factor to their growth. Obviously, some of the schemes that they could have put in place would have had profound impacts on their bottom line in terms of margin erosion, would have just radically increased the cost burden of fulfilling every order, right? So like, for example, they didn't just go out of the gate with free shipping on everything. That would have been just like cataclysmic, even though growth would have probably been phenomenal. So Prime was kind of what they ended up landing on, right? As you kind of pay in advance. And when you amortize, all those Prime subscriptions across all customers and the amount of growth it enabled, then that was actual like, wow, very disruptive, like growth fueling, but also not wildly, the cost of it wasn't wildly out of line with the benefits. So keep in mind, if you're trying to disrupt what end up being these kind of baseline natural rhythms of your business, there are costs that come with doing that. Often. Similar, like, so let's look at like something like a shopping cart abandonment rate, which is a metric that, right, this performance directly impacts conversion rate, but it's, that percentage of people that put a product in their cart, right, but don't actually complete an order. For e-commerce, I mean, it's what, depending on this particular industry, product categories, etc. E-commerce cart abandonment rates are somewhere in the like sort of like, let's call 50 to 80% is certainly the range of normal. That's pretty astounding, right?
I contributed to at least like 20% of abandonment cards over my years.
Oh yeah. No, this isn't new information, right? Yeah, we know, like most of us, right? Most of us use our shopping carts, right? Like wish lists, and sometimes we just want to see if we'll get a promotion that we weren't expecting. I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons people put things in their carts, but there seems to be there seem to be few limits to people's browsing and shopping behaviors, compared to their actual purchase behaviors. Like people are really happy to like research and looky-loo online. And so even if you remove kind of all friction points and add every potential incentive for somebody to complete the purchase, again, you should be doing all these things, right? Streamlining your checkout, certainly remove any kind of broken friction points or bad user experiences, like get rid of that stuff, like use your smarts, fix your website, but you're still going to end up with a shopping cart abandonment rate that you probably think is higher than it should be. And so let's say you were starting at 70% checkout abandonment rate. For your particular type of product and market and pricing scheme, again, the competition, all the different factors that play it here. Maybe if you start approaching that like 59% cart abandonment rate, maybe you can't really budge beyond that very, maybe you can get to 58, but I mean, let's just say like you're starting to hit that asymptote, that hidden ceiling of improvement. And once you do, I mean, in one way, it's a good news story, right? It means maybe you're kind of wringing out everything that you do have in your control, right? So it can be a good indicator of like diminishing returns of focusing on shopping cart abandonment rate. Again, you should monitor it. You should try and improve the performance. If you can think of disruptive changes that might really change performance, just always weighing the cost of implementing those disruptive changes against the benefits. But again, there are times where you can burst through that, and then it's for you to decide, you know, is it worth it? Does it make sense commercially? And maybe for the kind of let's call it like what kind of customer acquisition mode your business is in, or what kind of growth mode. Maybe you need kind of scaled growth that you can find a way to make more profitable down the road. So you might weigh that, you know, when you're weighing like ways to break through that type of ceiling or natural metric that you're running up against. Any questions about that so far?
No, that's good, I think.
I think the other place where people, I think, struggle to become more data driven in their business operations is when we talk about, you know, data driven marketing or data informed marketing. Like what does it entail? I don't think, you know, a lot of people sort of think like accessing a report in GA4 and looking at information is being data driven, and it really isn't, right? You're just sort of consuming information. You actually need to be able to do data discovery, formulate business questions, maybe even hypotheses, right, about those questions you're generating, and then you need to set yourself up to make digital marketing decisions that you can actually look at the results and derive insights from. So, and then based on those insights, you can make changes. So you can see the impact of decisions you made and then make changes in response to those inputs, right? So it's actually putting yourself in a position to like make different decisions based on what information is telling you, and your own ability to derive insights from that data. So, I mean, another interesting sort of place this happens is as we are losing directly observable insights into media performance, you know, some media performance analysis type approaches that, you know, were, I guess, more popular in the past are making a comeback, and in some ways they're even more powerful now because of the computation power that the cloud has unlocked, and I guess the accessibility of some of these approaches. I'm talking about here like about media mix modeling or marketing mix modeling, and this idea, right, of like, again, as you launch a business. So here I have just like revenue against a week, right? So weekly revenue for about a 2-year period of time by week. So again, as a business is growing, it's acquiring repeat customers, right? It's getting more and more mature. At some point, you're going to have some like what I would call a kind of a stable baseline or heartbeat of your revenue, which would be if you kind of added no new marketing dollars. And maybe, you know, or let's say if you kept your sort of evergreen initiatives in play, but had like no new kind of marketing dollars in place, this would be sort of, at least for some foreseeable period of time, it would be kind of your heartbeat of baseline revenue, right, from those orders. So in this case, right, we start to approach this like level of like, say, $115,000 of weekly revenue. And, you know, it bounces, you can see there's some lumpiness, right? So now we're here, like at this point, we're like in year 3, the early part of year 3, but we have this sort of bumpiness, but we have this kind of heartbeat of like consistent baseline revenue. Okay. So then the idea as a data-driven marketer is, right, like incrementality is one of these things that's like top of people's mind. And keep in mind, these visuals are grossly simplified. Like you actually have to work with a data scientist. Like this is for example purposes here. So you need to actually work with a data scientist to run the modeling and for have this be statistically validated. I'm just showing you, kind of visually what you might expect to see, so you can get to thinking about what the actual like statistics-based analysis will look like, why it matters, how you set up your campaigns, the cadence, the budgeting, the flighting, all of these things matter, right? So if we jump into this next slide, right? So we have that, this is the same slide as before with the roughly $115,000 in baseline revenue characterized by the blue, and then the green is incremental revenue driven by media campaigns. Okay. So that's why it's so important to have this kind of heartbeat, this baseline, and then to sort of be able to see that incremental gain you're getting from your media. Again, this is a lot more difficult to do in practice than this visual here. You do have to work with somebody who really knows data science well. You have to have clean data. You have to have complete data. A couple years worth of data at weekly level granularity is really important. But if you kind of just look at these peaks in incremental revenue here, right, at week 111 and week 119, I have, paid social and connected TV campaigns that come in to the picture here at a combined investment of 30,000. At 119, we have $40,000, 20K in paid social, 20K in connected TV. And we see now again, the actual, like the reality of this would be much of this benefit would carry over into subsequent weeks. So this is directly aligned to the week in which the media is made. Again, this is for illustrative purposes, okay? But now we're starting to look at impact of media on incremental revenue in ways now I can actually, as a marketer, decide, are these investments making sense for the business based on the incremental benefit I'm gaining, or if they're not, right? If you don't see these peaks, whether they're in week or delayed and kind of decay over time, right? However it manifests in reality, right? You need to be able to say this 40K in week 119 translated into 45,000 of new customer revenue, with an estimated lifetime value, blah, 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 right? You need to be able to start talking about media investments in this kind of aggregate, big bucket kind of an approach. And if you notice here, for this kind of slice of time, weeks 111 through 120, how I flight my media budgets per channel has a huge impact on what insights I can derive, right? So if I have, for like certain time periods, for 1 week, for these 4 weeks, for example, I had $17,500 in paid social media dollars. If I had just flighted that like a daily average or a weekly budget that was identical, I would have zero variability in media spend through those 4 weeks. Similar for CTV, I chose to go heavy up, blast for a week, and then I just was like, okay, I'll go dark for several weeks. Now, maybe that's not ultimately the right decision. Maybe just introducing weekly variability, right, which you can see throughout that time period. There's definitely shifts in budget, but without variability in media spend across those weeks, it is very difficult for a statistically based version of this to draw, to really show the variability of impact aligned. So what you want to see is the variability of the media investment along with the variability of incremental revenue impact against that baseline, right? So that's the key. So variability, you have to actually plan that into your flighting, maybe not for the entire year, but for significant periods of time, you need to be thinking creatively about how you flight media. I mean, the other, some of the other approaches people take is like these kind of like matched media, matched market like tests where you have, roughly approximately same size markets with similar demos and similar performance for your business, right? And then you test a media exposure in one market versus not in another market. That's another way. That's also variability, right? You just have to make sure that they really are as matched as you think they are. But so in order to be data driven, you have to plan and allow for kind of variability in exposure to media, levels of media investment, and it has to be structured in a way that gives you insights that you can then take actions on at the end of that process. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
So yeah, I just think, I mean, being a data-driven marketer is the reason why it's a kind of a hallmark of digital maturity is it's not particularly easy to do, and it requires some discipline, right? I mean, I guess maturity by definition is sort of a I guess discipline, perspective, and experience are all part of maturity, and in general, and digital maturity for sure. And so I think, as a marketer, you need to like set the conditions to derive insights that you can actually take meaningful action from. This is just one example of that. And you have to understand those core metrics, right? There are these kind of natural kind of heartbeats of your business that unless you profoundly change something about your business or the competitive landscape changes, you're going to have a hard time just sort of like naturally breaking through certain of these hidden asymptotes, invisible asymptotes.
Like what? Like the metrics that you're talking about is specific.
Yeah, so conversion rate, check out abandonment rate, growth rates. I think the example that Eugene gives in terms of Amazon growth rate, that's a big because for most product sets, the total addressable market doesn't change that quickly, right? So, and especially if it's a mature market, the kind of pricing may already be well established. The competitive landscape may be already well established. There's just really almost any of the kind of core kind of metrics that you're going to kind of look at and assess your performance by. There are going to be these kind of natural ceilings that you approach. So you're going to be able to make rapid improvements early on, and then you're going to flatten out and you're going to kind of run up against that ceiling. And then maybe, again, if you can find these disruptive practices, then maybe you'll break through that. And then at some point it's gonna, it's not going to be endless just because you had a disruption, right? It is going to start to flatten out again. It'll just be a bit higher now. So maybe you went from 2.35% conversion rate is kind of your natural ceiling, and now maybe it's 2.95 or 3.05, right?
Wow. Okay.
And then of course there's all the seasonal things. So in retail for sure, right? Like around the holidays, like you have to account for the seasonality, right? So part of that baseline, that heartbeat data, right? If we had let's see, like if these weeks were inclusive of a holiday period, right? There would be this natural seasonal hump for sure, and at least in the parts of the world that do the you know, Black Friday, Cyber Monday sort of routine, and then you'll see these kind of, you know, big humps, and of course your own, if you anniversary your own promotions, you know, seasonal promotions, things like that, you'll have those humps will be part of your baseline that you need to account for. But that's, you know, from a modeling standpoint, that's not that hard to do. You just need to account for it.
So,
Right, like in yeah.
no, continue. I'll ask you about some after things.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, like, depending on what region of the world you're in, like in MENA, right, those seasonal bumps are gonna, you know, be aligned more closely to maybe Ramadan and all those kinds of things, but there's still gonna be,
Yeah,
these seasonal effects on certain businesses, right?
I do wonder if, because we have been, you know, talking about like retails and stuff like that. I wonder if it's similar to other businesses. Like we have worked with retail, we have worked with e-commerce, we have worked with media, we have worked with people in was it airlines? Yeah, it was airlines. I do wonder if there is a similar characteristic between all of these industries or something that could be universally applied to most, if not all of them.
Hmm. That's a really good question. Can you ask the question in a slightly different way? I'm not 100% sure I fully.
Okay, so we were talking about, you know, the breaking out of the plateaus and the term that I will not remember for the life of me. The, the what was it? The ice. Okay,
An asymptote.
yeah, exactly. We have been talking about retail and stuff like that for the last couple of 10 minutes. I was wondering if, because like there are other businesses other than retail, does the same kind of thing apply also to them?
So conceptually, yes. That's okay. Now I fully grasp the question, and I appreciate it. It's a good one. So I think the concept applies, but maybe the metrics that you would be looking at are different. So for example, like in a business to business lead generation scenario, right? You're going to be looking at those, let's say your conversion rates from different, so like say, uh, how how well are you converting raw leads, right? How good do raw leads transition to marketing qualified leads or MQLs to sales qualified leads, SQLs, right? And then for SQLs, right, how many of those make, you know, matriculate to you know, like fully qualified opportunities. And then, you know, when you have a real good, like when you have a certain quality of opportunity, right? Like what's your win-loss rate for opportunities, right? So those kind of metrics that over time, those get to be pretty stable as well. I think early on, you know, there's a lot of learning that's being done, and you probably don't have all of the sales assets you need and your process ironed out. So it's pretty lumpy and inconsistent early on, but as you develop proper processes for nurturing and developing your sales process, I think, you know, you should expect to see those metrics also, right? Like, so if you have a win rate, you know, for you know a properly like sales qualified lead, like if your win rate is 1 in 10 or something like that, um, you'd be doing great if you change that win rate to like 1 out of 9, right? That would be a big that would be a big shift, right? You probably shouldn't expect it to go to 1 out of 5. And again, unless you like, if you really like, let's say you really change something up at the top of the funnel, you really started like narrowing like you change something fundamentally about how you're targeting and acquiring those leads in the first place. Like unless you really change something about the makeup of those opportunities, you shouldn't really expect anything to like radically change about your win rates, right? Once it's, again, early on, there's all kinds of lumpiness. You're still learning, you're still sorting things out. You're probably not even, you probably haven't even developed your service or product offering well enough, so but once it's stabilized, yeah, I would say any business that has key performance metrics, you're going to, at some point, you're going to hit against these natural kind of ceilings. And then unless you radically change something, you're not going to change that ceiling all that much. So again, part of your forecasting, part of your pipeline analysis should be a very clear understanding of those kind of natural ratios. And so if you, I mean, in the B2B, right, if you know to hit your numbers, if you know you need 25 opportunities, then you better understand all the upstream points, those ratios, to really know, like, what does your lead acquisition need to look like at a given quality. Right.
That's good. I mean, nothing to do with the podcast, but we'll do a session to tell me all the metrics and the KPIs for the businesses that we should write blogs about. We have one for banking. We should definitely do ones for retail, e-commerce, businesses like this. I think that would go very, very well with today's episode. Um,
I think you're
but
right.
back to the podcast. Yeah, I think we should have like a guide, like many blogs that talk about specific metrics that, you know, people in these kind of key businesses should definitely be looking at. I think that should be one of the things that we should be doing.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think we should do it. Well, I mean, that's kind of this is, I mean, we're kind of at the end of the road in terms of today's topic. I just wanted to kind of get those creative juices flowing for people of what it really means to be a data-driven marketer, the kinds of things you need to pay attention to. It's not just looking at information, it's setting yourself up to make decisions based on data and the insights you've derived therefrom, and then to assess the impact of those decisions and to continuously or I always get those two confused, continuous or continual, continuously, I guess, to over and over again make adjustments and new decisions based on new data. And you have to structure your processes to accommodate that, such as
Yep.
introducing variability into your media spend. One example.
Sounds good. One last thing before we finish, because I love hearing podcasts, and I think people might have the wrong kind of mentality when they listen to podcasts. People think when they listen to a podcast that not even us, I mean, anyone would solve their specific niche issue that they are looking for. But this is not usually how it goes for podcasts. I think the main gist of the podcast is we get the juices flowing, as you said, and then it just pops up in your mind the solution that you were looking for all along. It all the podcasts work like this. All of my good ideas have came like maybe a day or two ahead. I
Yeah,
mean, that's just one thing that we should point out.
that's
Oh,
a really good point. Yeah, we probably have not necessarily addressed somebody's pressing question head on. Certainly not that this is not meant as a technical podcast, so we're not actually walking you through how to execute a MMM model, right? Like, uh, in R or Python or something like that. But conceptually, these are the kinds of things you need to kind of wrap your head around, and you need to, again, structure your media so that you can give a data scientist the type of data at the granularity level they need, with the variability they need to actually give you meaningful analysis and insights.
Yep, definitely could not agree more. Well, it looks like this is all the time that we have. Thank you so much, Patrick. This has been really interesting. Lots of graphs and stuff that I definitely did not study in college and forget.
The funny part is, I can't seem to figure out how to get out of this presentation. There we go.
I'm back. I'm back.
I was stuck in an endless loop of Chrome in
Presentation.
presentation mode. Yeah. I guess I'm not as I guess I'm not as digitally mature as I thought I was. I can't
Oh,
operate Chrome
damn.
effectively.
Damn. All right. Well, I'll see you next time, Patrick. Thank you so much for joining me, and definitely keep an eye out for those blogs that should be going live fairly soon. To be honest, I'll work on them as fast as I can. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Masalam, masalam, bye.
Bye.